Cortell. Yay. Sorry, I wasn't waiting till she gets reported. Yeah. We'll start off. We'll call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is roll call. All right. Billy Beal. Here. Rob Cortell. Derek Day. Felicia Ansa. John Anzavino. Sarah Calvert. Renee Daniels. Bruce Davis. Here. Jackie Davis.
Here.
Dan Herker. Val Folds.
Here. I mean, in my booster chair. I'm here too. I was having some problems with my audio. Renee Daniels.
We got you. Thank you, Renee. Joel Griffin. Berthia Haney. Lisa Hall.
Here.
Shannon Kennedy. Kim McClellan.
Here.
Morgan Quick. Jeff. His name is
Sapirsky.
Oh, Sapirsky. Linda Worrell.
Here.
Here. Okay, thank you. If we don't have a quorum, do we worry about approving the members for participation remotely? See it's corrected ahead, so we will skip over that. I would remind those that didn't submit it, it's helpful to us in recording votes and getting a quorum, that if you were unable to attend and meet the criteria, that you can tell us in advance, and that way we can include you in here. Otherwise, it creates some record keeping problems and some vote tracking problems. Ian, would you like to introduce some staff? Sure. Changes? Yeah, well, I think that I'm going to go around for Sarah's benefit. I'm losing my voice, and for Billy and Amy's benefit as well. So I'll wait. I'll let you guys go last when I do Sarah, but we'll start over there and go around.
Okay, I'm Kimberly. I'm Associate Provost for Career and Workforce at University of Mary Washington.
I'm Bruce Davis. I run the Educational Foundation at Germanic Community College.
Steve Goodall, I'm the HR manager at the paper mill in West Point, Virginia, a company called West Point.
I'm Jackie Davis. I'm the executive for the paper.
Lisa Hull, coordinator for Northern Neck Tourism.
Billy Gamble, program administrator at EHCD for Good Virginia.
Andy Lewis. I'm also administrator at UHCD.
Billy Beal, chair, retired guy, former CEO of Atlantic Union Bank.
Jen Cliff, I'm the chief technology. Kim McClellan, I'm the public policy director for the first one area association of Career Force. Kate Gibson, deputy director, George Washington.
Ian James, I'm the Region 6 program director. And before Anne-Marie and Sarah introduce themselves, so Anne-Marie sadly is leaving us. This is last week. So this is her last week. We had to have her around for one more regional council meeting. We're excited about that. But we're really excited to have Sarah Oldicker on board. So yeah, Anne-Marie, if you want to introduce yourself, and then Sarah, if you just want to tell us a little about the background.
Anne-Marie Swanson. I'm Logan Elbach. I'm with the Public Affairs Office.
Nick Minor, Economic Development.
And we will not ask everybody on the phone to, and watching on video, to introduce themselves. So
Just a quick question. So Joel Griffin is on. I don't know if that changes our quorum. Are we two shy or one shy?
It doesn't,
Okay.
because he's not technically
He didn't.
approved.
we didn't,
got it, okay.
one of those that didn't get approval in advance. So we're going to skip the consent agenda. Did we have any requests for public presentation? All right, we did not have any requests. Is there anybody that, is there any public involvement commentary for anybody that's watching virtually? Okay, hearing none. I am excited to hear this. This is, I think when we started Go Virginia partnership of some type with Dahlgren to not only to learn about what it does, that you can tell us, but also the opportunity to create some sort of commercial intellectual property transfer has been a goal, and I know y'all been working closely with Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, Corey Roberts, and on those kinds of things. But I'm excited for the opportunity to hear this and to build a closer relationship. So,
Where am I sitting?
Would you rather me go up front or is it?
You sit next to
here,
Jennifer.
or what's your thought?
Sure, you can, I can go through the slide.
Oh, this is pretty quick.
You can go.
Totally up to you.
I'm-
You didn't miss anything.
I'm gonna let you get in there.
All right. Hey, I can't thank you enough for inviting me to speak today. As you talk about, we've been partnering now for some time. I'm happy to provide some updates, some successes. And then there's some things that I'm just gonna, please throw out your ideas. There's a lot I don't know in terms of partnering. We may be doing some cool stuff that I may not be connecting the dots that could have broader application. So I'm Jen Clift. I've been in this role for a couple of years and pretty excited about the things that we have going on. Okay. So I think I was invited here to talk about the digital proving grounds. And we had been talking about how we were going to connect digitally, experiment digitally. We're still going to be doing that. But we've broadened the scope and really kind of expanded our focus. So we're going to be the Dahlgren Proving Ground. That's what we are. We have a very rich history in testing and evaluation, more than 100 years. We have the nation's largest over water instrumented range. You probably hear it frequently. Number of capabilities over the last 100 years. And we're placing a lot of emphasis from an investment perspective in revolutionizing our range. So there's a lot that we're doing right now in terms of what are the capabilities that we need to further advance capabilities. That's going to open up, I think, some additional partnering opportunities, experimentation at the center, and certainly going to increase our hands-on RDT&E. Okay, so for today and the future, really focusing on live, virtual, and constructive capabilities. So live, that's firing a weapon, right? Virtual, we're able to test in virtual environments, which enables us to save money, a lot of money, if you don't have to go to a ship or do something physically on the range. And then also constructive. So we have a lot of effort right now in expanding our modeling and simulation capabilities. And a whole host of things that we're working, from electric weapons to laser systems. We are establishing connectivity across all of our labs and our facilities, which is really allowing us to experiment differently. Okay. So community impact. We are the largest federal R&D employer in the state of Virginia. $1.9 billion, we're 100% working capital fund. And what that means is what we bring in goes back out. And there's some breakout here in terms of how the incoming funds, what they look like from an outgoing perspective. We have just over 4,900 government employees, and then another almost 4,000 contractors that make up our technical workforce. We are doing a lot of great things, and I have a breakout of some of our academic and intellectual impacts that we're making. 80% of our workforce is technical workforce, and then the remaining 20% makes up our business and our operations functions. I mentioned we've done a lot, and I've got some slides on this in terms of our partnering. So we have significantly increased partnering, whether that's cooperative research and development agreements, education partnerships. I think we've doubled our education partnership agreements. This slide was just recently updated, I think over I don't know, it was like a 3 or 4 year period. We had done like $3.5 million in academic research grants and STEM engagement. And as you'll see, I mean, we've done $3.5 million just this year. So we're doing some great things there. Okay, so I think probably most of you have seen this, and if you don't have our strategic plan, we can certainly get you copies of that. This is hosted probably on our website. But just really quickly wanted to talk about our technical thrust. These really also represent, I oversee our S&T investment portfolio. And this is going to represent the majority right now of our technical investments. In addition to what we'll talk about is reinventing our range. So from an intelligent automation perspective, that is all things unmanned systems, artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're doing a lot of interesting things from a test and evaluation perspective. So we're making some investments to our range that will support outdoor unmanned systems testing, or I should say enhanced. We already do quite a bit of that. But we're also looking and we're working with university partners for like artificial intelligence test beds. And I've got a slide that talks about some of our existing partners. Software engineering revolution. So we are leading the Navy's software factory efforts. So that's helping us establish software standards, quality metrics, making sure that from a Navy perspective, we're doing this consistently. You have digital engineering. Digital engineering, we have a key focus on systems of systems engineering, model-based systems engineering, and virtualization. Hypersonic weapons advancement. We've been in this business for a long time. We're doing a lot, really decades. We've been involved in that. Interesting things, improving our test capabilities there. And then information superiority. So can I click this here? Okay, information superiority. So that's really giving our warfighters the information that they need to make really informed and timely decisions. And then we have strategic goal 2. Those are a lot of our business and operations functions where we're making some improvements there. Okay, strategic partnering. So this is kind of where we'd start talking about this innovation ecosystem. I think that we're all very interested in establishing. We're working hard to become better partners. I think that we're getting there. I think those of us, all of us together, will make a bigger difference than those of us working in our individual areas. I think that the Dahlgren Proving Ground can help be a foundation for our partnerships. I think we're doing a really, really great job on the academia and industry side of the house. I think we're making good strides from a partnership intermediary perspective, but we have a little ways to go. I think we're still figuring out how we can each benefit one another. But we are doing some great work that I'll talk about in just a second. Really want to be able to provide more opportunities for hands-on RD&E, research, development, test, and evaluation. Want to make it easier for industry and academia to partner with us. We want to do more from a technology transfer perspective and really just allow technology advancements across numerous industrial sectors. And those could be some that we don't know, right? That we need your help in terms of how we can do better and maximize partnering. Okay, I think this is what Billy wanted to talk about. So opportunities for technology growth. So there are obviously a number of areas in terms of where NSWC Dahlgren is making investments and where we have significant capabilities. So cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, quantum computing, we're working with some industry partners. NSWC Dahlgren, it's very unlikely that we'll ever build a quantum computer at NSWC Dahlgren. We're going to rely on some of our industry partners to help us with some of those capabilities. And then advanced modeling and simulation, which we already talked about. So we have been collaborating with different innovation centers. So I think earlier we were talking about Dave Irie and some of the partnering that we've been discussing. I think we have an opportunity really to accelerate that. I will tell you that we're working right now. We're going through all of our patents and we're looking for opportunities, pulling that information together, fielding it out to our partnership intermediaries, allowing them to help us match make where they see something that maybe we don't. We're making a dent in it. We have a lot of patents, a lot of intellectual property. So one of the things we've actually brought someone in, they're going through all the patents and then looking for potential commercial uses for those patents. I think that there are some things within this community that are starting that will help us, whether it's some of the work that Curry Roberts is doing with Fredericksburg Regional Alliance and bringing folks in to look at some of our intellectual property. We have a couple of good examples, where we've licensed some things and it's been good for the region, good for Dahlgren, good for first responders, whatever. We need more of that and we need your help. This really isn't, like Billy was saying earlier, it's kind of a different line of business. It's not really a line of business for us, right? But it's what we need to do in terms of being a good partner, helping identify those technologies and intellectual property that can be used elsewhere. Tons of academic growth. I think I have a slide on some of our K through 12 STEM initiatives. Lots of college and university research. We're bringing more and diverse people to this region. So we are continuing to hire. We just had a job fair that we held in the Fredericksburg area. Great interest in coming to Dahlgren. I think I don't know how many we hired, but a lot. So that is definitely continuing. Increased grants and capstones, and we're working really, really hard to establish relationships with faculty. We're also increasing opportunities to bring faculty here to work over the summer. It's connecting us better to students and just doing some amazing collaborative research with these professors. Something I'm super, super excited about. So NSWC Dahlgren just announced, it's on challenge.gov, our first ever prize challenge. It's a big deal to me. So very, very excited. That's going to be for universities. We're planning to host here at the University of Mary Washington. I think it's going to be 25 different universities that will come here for a challenge in artificial intelligence machine learning. And that's going to give us a capability that right now we need, that we're going to give them a challenge, something that we've been working on. And you're going to have some of the best and brightest across the nation coming here to work on that. We're also planning, so the goal will be to host a few of these every year. And the next would be for small business. So great stuff. And I think it's definitely, it's going to open up partnering, bring more people here, support recruiting, and then just accelerating capabilities. And then opportunities for infrastructure growth to support small businesses, bringing our industry leaders and academia here for experimentation via the Dahlgren Proving Ground. So we've got some pretty cool upcoming experiments that we're going to be working at NSWC Dahlgren with some of our partners. Just joining forces, combining research areas, to build better products. Okay, so I quickly wanted to talk about, we have well over 200 partnerships right now, well over. I probably should have brought the number. We have significantly increased our partnering, and this is just a few notable partnerships that I want to highlight, just so you can see the types of organizations that we're working with, and some are different than we've worked with before. So NVIDIA, most have probably heard of NVIDIA, cutting edge in terms of artificial intelligence and some of their virtualization, autonomous systems. We have formed a very, very beneficial collaborative partnership with NVIDIA. We're still in process, but I kind of alluded to some of the quantum computing things that we're working, and that's Microsoft Corporation. So we're in the process right now of establishing a cooperative research and development agreement with Microsoft. And that's going to allow us to experiment in ways that we can't currently. Some of the more traditional industry partners that we're working with and have recently established agreements with. And then the university partnering is kind of on fire right now, which is really, really exciting. Just a couple that I'll highlight. So we recently finalized a CRADA with Carnegie Mellon University. Carnegie Mellon is well known for software, robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So we have some really interesting projects that we're working with them, as well as bringing them to Dahlgren to conduct platform experiments within the Dahlgren Proving Ground. I could not be more proud. I'm a Mary Wash grad, so it kind of means even something more, I think. But we are doing some amazing partnering with the University of Mary Washington. Whether it's, and really partnering with different colleges than we have in the past, colleges, departments. So we're working with the Department of Education, and we're putting in a joint grant right now with the Navy to do some amazing things in terms of STEM outreach and really redesigning how we teach STEM, which is really important. We're doing some great things on the program management side of the house and having Mary Washington train our employees. And then we just sponsored a Summer Science Institute. There's some amazing research going on at the University of Mary Washington that was very exciting to be able to sponsor. Virginia Tech, doing a lot of great work with Virginia Tech across a number of different technology areas. And we're actually going to be sending one of our employees to Virginia Tech to conduct joint research for about 6 months with them. So we've got some really great things going with them, as well as having some of their professors work here for the summer. Germanna Community College. So we're partnered with them. We just recently sponsored a STEM event with them in the North Stafford area. And we have a whole host of things that we're planning. We just invited and had President Janet Gullickson visited recently and her team. So we're doing some good things there as well. And then I think I'll highlight the University of District of Columbia. So this has been a great partnership. So we're going to start supporting Saturday STEM events in the DC area and really inviting kids, parents, teachers, and just helping get the word out about STEM. We have all of our partnership intermediaries, many of you sitting here in this room. We just had a meeting, when was it, Nick? A few weeks ago, a month ago, and we had some really good ideas about just ways that we can better partner. We had talked with Dave Irie about some potential pilots that maybe we could do, I think on the unmanned system side. So definitely opportunity there. And then I'm super proud. I'll be more proud when it's actually put in place, but we're working closely with the National Science Foundation. We are really close to having a memorandum of agreement with them. It will be the first ever for the Navy. It's going to allow us to fund joint research for both industry and academia. It's going to really open the doors up for our local faculty, our local schools. It's just such amazing, many amazing things that can help with that. We just hosted the National Science Foundation a few months ago, and they're due back to Dahlgren in October. So that when we get that in place, I think it's gonna open some doors for some great collaborative research. Okay, I think this is my last slide. And I wanted to end on this because this is just goodness that we all care about. And I think we can all continue to work together to make good things happen. So we've been doing a lot of really great K through 12 STEM outreach across the region. This is only going to benefit us all. The more kids that we get excited about STEM, we get them learning about STEM, we have them join, hopefully choose defense careers, right, one day, but if not, just being technical developers is absolutely huge. So we've been doing a lot of different camps. We just, a couple weeks ago, we were at King George Middle School. We had a number of schools across the region that attended. I think it was 50 students attended a summer camp, and it was fantastic. One of the things that we're doing, I mentioned with Mary Washington, is the joint grant that we're currently proposing, which will just allow us honestly to kind of transform. It's really going to provide, this grant will provide teachers and students in our area with materials and curriculum and a database of STEM related activities that they don't currently have. We're even talking about a mobile STEM makerspace that we can take to different events, farmers market, wherever, right? Just to get more kids, especially our underserved populations, making sure that they have access to these technologies. Doing a lot for teacher professional development. We've got a great virtual, we're really trying to just be back in person, but as we need to, we do have a very successful virtual STEM outreach. And then we've made a number of equipment donations to schools. And I think this picture here, most of you have probably seen that. That was here at Mary Washington. We had almost 100 students here for a robotics innovation challenge, and it was just fantastic. I think that's my last slide. Any questions for me? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Are you working with Naval X?
We are. Yep. Yep. In fact, Naval X, their new CTO will be here in the next couple of weeks. Yep.
And
Sweet. We don't currently have an education partnership with them, but I would love to.
They're the only women's college.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do not believe we currently do, but I know that we've talked about that in the past. So yeah, definitely. With who? So we are currently in the process of establishing an education partnership with William & Mary.
And how is the partnership with Dave Erie?
Great. Great. Okay. So we just met with Dave. Dave is doing some really exciting, very exciting things. And we came up with a couple of potential pilots that we could work together and see how, you know, from a commercial perspective, military perspective, how we could connect a couple of things to advance certain technologies.
So this is dual use technology.
That's the plan. Yes. Yes, definitely.
How are you doing on hyperscience? I bet you know our plans.
Well, we're doing a lot from testing. We're doing a lot from investments. Yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer, no. That's just propulsion.
Yeah,
And so I'm
that's right.
surprised there's not some sort of commercial application.
Yeah.
Dialed down, certainly, commercial application for that. Training, or other sort of.
Well, there's a hypersonic aircraft being developed.
Yeah.
I think it's Lockheed and Boeing, one of those. It's not as fast as those others, though.
Mhm.
Missiles.
You had I guess, two questions. One is, are all your patents in the public domain? I mean, you can go find them if you wanted to. And then the
Most.
second question is,
I mean, the ones that we
Like
would,
India.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
it's only been about, I think you average about 16 a year. And I don't have any sense as to, is that good or not good? Is that I guess, based on 621 over 36 years, is that is that good or not good or?
So I'll tell you that we have put in place a number of incentives to help with invention disclosures. So last year we had 23 or 24 invention disclosures. We do have a number of patents that we have a lot of patents in the process. And we are creating ways to help get those patents through the process faster. So we have a number that would then hit the application phase. Getting them awarded, it takes a while. It just takes a while. So we're working on our upfront process to get things moving much quicker, but then getting them awarded is another.
So Virginia University, notoriously terrible at tech transfer. So what about you guys? How are you thinking about tech transfer in terms of to do something?
So we are all about it. I think, yeah, I think that, and I think we have some room for improvement. So what we're doing right now is we're going through all of our intellectual property. And I've got a series of quads right now. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but every.
I'm talking about actual transfer. So let's say I'm an.
Yeah, you got to see it first. That's the.
What kind of terms do you guys do?
Oh, I'd have to defer to my legal counsel. I think honestly, I believe it differs. So I think that there's in terms of the negotiations, but I can definitely get you in contact with our legal counsel for that.
Others?
If we know entrepreneurs in the area who are interested in technology, commercialization, and that sort of thing, what would be their first step?
I mean, I'd be happy. Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to anyone. And I think some of our partnership intermediaries are doing a good job of connecting. So I would also encourage them to be reaching out to the Curry Roberts and the others to discuss potential opportunities as well.
So I should just refer them to Curry?
No, or me. But I just, as another, I think many of the partnership intermediaries are working similar things and would be interested in helping kind of match make. But yeah, I think us getting information out, I mean, it can be found on the public domain, as you mentioned, and we had partnered, TechLink pushes a lot of those out, but we got to do something different in terms of getting the word out and what we have. So Public Affairs Office has set up a website that we're going to be using, and we're going to be posting a lot of those quads to that site for the public to view.
Live yet?
No, I mean, it's getting there. It may be live, but there's not enough on it. So I've hired someone right now who's very, very busy working through the patents and trying to get that information posted. Yes.
Well, so NASA has a terrific tech transfer effort going both. Okay, to identify and then push it out, and then they also hope build around technology, both inbound and outbound.
Yeah, and we actually talked about that at our last meeting, and Nick and Dave and Chris, we actually talked about them hosting a conference of sorts, and we would come and talk through some of our patents and technology and things like that. Yes.
Some of the technology has commercialization. Can you share some of those projects first? So we can get a flavor for what's actually being transferred?
So I would say the primary one, we've had a number of things that have been licensed that are then developed for the Navy, which is still a commercialization. So we've had some mechanical type things that we've that are manufactured in the area. But Dahlgren Decon is probably the most popular, I would say. That was a ChemBio technology that was then fielded to support first responders, I believe. I think there's actually two locations for that business now. Yes.
First, I'd like to compliment you on your work you're doing with the K-12.
Thank you.
That's awesome. We're the paper mill down there in West Point. We've been working hard with our schools over the last, been there 9 years. So probably 8 of those 9 years, we've been working with them and trying to get even further out in the community. And we started with our engineering type degree people. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we realized that we're missing a whole group of students. And they're the ones that aren't going to be going on to secondary education. So we've started gearing towards those students as well to get them a pathway into the mill. And they might be going to a 2-year college or no college at all. They just want to come into a manufacturing environment. And I don't know if you guys have looked at it. And I realize your field is IT there, and I get the STEM for you, but I would think that as the biggest employer in the area, and I don't know if your PR group or whatever has thought of it, or maybe you're doing it, but as you get into these schools and you're doing this, reach out and say, hey, because there's a lot more on your installation than just the STEM for the students in the area or the surrounding communities that could have pathways in there and have good careers, not necessarily doing the R&D stuff or, the IT side of it. And I don't know if anyone's ever thought of that. I know we've been pushing this the last few years just to get those students that we've missed. And we just missed them because we weren't thinking of them. We've been doing the college thing and just realized it. So I just throw that out there. A great job there.
Thank you.
I know it's tough once you get in there, and it's rewarding to see it pay off.
It is.
It really is.
Yes. And I think that the partnerships with Germanna and Mary Washington are just going to pay huge dividends. One of the things that we have worked, we've got a lot of great people going out to the schools. But we're not teachers. So we're missing the education aspect. And I think we've got that fixed. So I'm really excited to be able to collect metrics on just the difference and being more connected to more students. So I've just been blown away at some of the discussions that we've had with Mary Washington's College of Education and just things we hadn't thought of. So I think we're going to be able to maximize existing investments better.
At Germanna 2 weeks ago, we had a week-long student camp with 250 students, from 4th grade through 8th grade. And the faculty and staff were they couldn't get over how smart the kids were and how exhausted they were when they I just talked to Tina Lance the other day. And she had just come through that. So, and we're looking forward to partnering with Germanna on more of those events. So.
I had 2 of my grandboys, so I understand.
Go ahead. Guys thought of any way to formalize this making effort? So when I was in the manufacturing space, we worked a lot with defense contractors, mostly on the procurement side, but we would book on matchmaking events to conferences and things like that. And we would use the software similar to like what the USA does, the Big Economic Development Conference. We would use the software to match companies together with the defense contractors. Have you guys thought about that on the entrepreneurial side and the procurement
I think
side?
our partnership intermediaries are thinking of that.
So what we did early on was go through a list of what we thought was low-hanging fruit and try to figure out if there were existing companies within the region that would be interested in patent. The hard part was that you have simple-minded people like me trying to explain a patent to a very technical patent to a company that does something very, very specific. So then that led us to getting interviews with the patent holders and trying to break it down to us and try to figure out what type of uses it could be for, which then led us to the quadrants. So using the quadrants, that's how we're trying to be as targeted as we can. Again, the things that they do over there are so high level, not high level, but over my head anyway. It's hard for us to explain it to the company or to that person that would be able to commercialize it. So it's better almost for them to sort of interpret it, bring it back to us, and then try to market and sell it. So if we can figure out a way to streamline that, whether it's provide Jen more support and her staff, but that's sort of the way we try to matchmake early on. And then TechLink kind of does it as well, because TechLink has its own website and then they sort of break it down. You go to TechLink, but I'm not sure how aggressive TechLink is, specifically trying to help with Auburn, which I think our partners can take that on. Is that fair? Sam?
That's totally fair. Yep.
So that's what we've done so far.
Well, so on that, I know that this is, procurement is different than the commercialization piece, but and I know that you guys are more of an R&D base, but do you feel like there's significant procurement opportunities for businesses in the region?
Significant procurement opportunities. Can you?
Things that they could supply to the base or opportunities?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I haven't thought of the procurement aspects, but I would say yes. I mean, we're constantly procuring and building and, investing in new areas. So I would think procurement would come along with that, I think. I'm going to continue to think about that question though. Just
Yeah, no, well, I think I saw it somewhere in your strategic plan, so I think that maybe less significant than this piece, especially in the strategic plan
I mean,
specifically.
I would think contracting in general would be, will continue to grow.
Yeah. Northern Neck Technology. I mean, Allison Strong routinely meets with the Northern Neck small business technology community precisely to help them become vehicles or get on the Seaport vehicles.
Gotcha.
Contracting and all of that. So there are opportunities. It's just you have to be ready, prepared to.
Well, I guess that's kind of more of what I was getting to. How do we streamline that process to recognize those opportunities, expose companies to those?
Allison and Chris Parker are definitely your points of contact. And I can help connect anyone to them.
Jennifer,
Yes,
thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate your time and the Okay. Looks like it's now the Lisa Hall show. I hope you.
Nice to meet you, Sarah.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
Happy to be.
Do you want me to do from current side? I can do that.
HDMI is not plugged.
Oh, you're at more advanced or something?
It's not updating. It's like the screen's frozen now.
Oh, that's
Try.
great.
Yeah.
There you go. I think it might be doing something.
When in doubt, unplug and plug back in.
Oh.
Here we go.
I will wait till our chair returns.
Go ahead.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Not at all.
You didn't need to wait on that.
Not at all,
Thank you.
of course. We're going from the very high tech to the very low tech in the sense of workforce and creating a pipeline of workers in the Northern Neck for existing industries and future industries. So years ago, workforce was an issue. And we had no idea how little an issue it was until COVID. And then we realized the exponential impact that the pandemic had on workforce structural challenges, as well as introducing new challenges to the workforce environment in the country, really almost in the world, but certainly in smaller areas. And by way of focusing on the Northern Neck, it's sort of like when everybody else sneezes, the Northern Neck gets pneumonia. Sort of whatever trends are happening elsewhere are magnified in a rural area because we don't have the population, we don't have the resilience, and we lack a lot of other infrastructure that enables us to withstand a lot of shocks. So that said, we are grateful for 3 projects that have been completed. And the first one, didn't want to do that. Okay, let's see. Let me in that. Okay. Okay. Oops. How do I do that? Sorry, everyone. Okay. 3 projects and multiple partnerships. First of all, the Northern Neck Workforce Site Selection Feasibility Study. Jackie provided the match for that through the Department of Labor funding, and Rappahannock Community College also was key in guiding that project. And that was a per capita allocation grant. And really, this project was for RCC. This was really developed for RCC to look at their 5 to 10-year plan, to look at the industries in the area. What did the industries need? Where were the gaps in the curriculum, and what needed to be done to fill those gaps, with the idea of keeping those industries there, because a lot of other projects have been shaped by potentially losing industries. We don't have many industries to start with. And so the ones that are there, we try to build existing industries. It's a whole lot easier in economic development to build your existing industry base than it is to recruit new people, especially when the existing industry leaves because there's no workforce. So we're not going to attract anybody else to come in the same way. So the workforce study, and then the second one was the Westmoreland Workforce Training Center Extension. That is AKA the welding program. And Westmoreland County was the subgrantee on that, and Rappahannock Community College again operated the program. And that was an ERR grant. And the last one was a commercial kitchen study with Longwood University's Foundation, RCC, and USDA provided the match for that. And that was per capita allocation grant. And that was a study to determine if a commercial kitchen was feasible, desirable, and useful for scaling up maybe food-based entrepreneurship in the Northern Neck at Longwood Hill Springs outside of Montrose. I am having issues with this slideshow. Just, yeah, okay. The workforce study. I'm not going to go over all these things. You're welcome to send you some of the recommendations, but these are this part. I'm cutting to the chase with the workforce study with the recommendations. They did a study that compared RCC's curriculum to other existing curriculums elsewhere, and how that shook out, and also in talking with industries and what was offered at RCC. And sort of the gist of it was that RCC offered most of the things that current employers wanted, but the current employers didn't know they existed. And so there was a big communications gap, it turned out, between all of that. However, there were other programs that are not offered at RCC that could be offered or refined to assist employers to grow heavy equipment. A lot of these have very expensive startup costs and things like that. So I don't know that any of this can be implemented overnight, but the big takeaway on all of this is that RCC applied for a Good Jobs grant through EDA, and I don't know the results of that, whether that has been funded or not. I know that it's extraordinarily competitive application pool. So I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I know that this study provided the basis, a lot of the basis for their application. So that was really, really helpful. One of the other things too that the study was to look at was expanding training locations. And really, at the time the study was conceived, there was a shopping center in Warsaw that was centrally located, not leased at the time. And the idea of possibly centralizing workforce operations there and offering additional programming and all of that was in the back of everyone's mind. That space became partially leased. I think, I'm not sure if it's the whole thing leased now, but it's not at all the space that it was. And then again, with the pandemic and a lot of the restructuring that's been happening, that is no longer an option. But talking about the West, flipping to the Westmoreland Workforce Center where the welding is located, that has additional capacity behind that could be built on if that were ever desired. And there's acreage there again that could accommodate heavy equipment and things like that. So, and then culinary arts training also emerged as a need. Again, it was a need before the pandemic with the hospitality. Northern Neck hospitality and tourism actually increased over the pandemic and stayed open and all of that. And so culinary has gone off the charts in terms of need, and restaurants are cutting hours and cutting service and cutting days because they cannot find the workforce. So that is still an upside down issue with workforce. So culinary arts training continues to be almost in, I would say it's summer, it's July, it's in crisis mode. So the long-term utility of the study, like I said, in-depth look at the curriculum and comparative study, and it's being used as a foundation for future grant applications for RCC, and that's basically the end use. One of the problems, again, pointing to the pandemic, we were thinking going into this study that fiberglass training would be really helpful. And I still think it would be because of all the boats and marine repair equipment and things like that. But the reason why we're motivated by fiberglass is river pools and spas in Warsaw. And they do fiberglass pools. Well, their manufacturing, they could not find the workforce, so they actually shut down the manufacturing function there and moved the manufacturing elsewhere over the course of the pandemic. And now they did not lose any jobs, and they still distribute manufactured pools in the East Coast from that location. So the jobs remained the same, but the manufacturing actually was lost. So. Happier story, the Westmoreland Workforce Training Center expansion. That is still in force. We started with a smaller program that we were trying to build up and pass on to RCC. RCC was not ready at the conclusion of that pilot program to receive the program. And so this expansion was a bridge between Westmoreland County's orchestration of the program and the full implementation, assumption of the lease, assumption of all the obligations by RCC for this program. So, and the outcomes, those were what we were aiming for. We didn't quite get there. Again, these were, when we entered into this, we just didn't know what would be able to be done with the training and the pandemic and all of that. Currently, they have Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and they have 10 people in them, and they have 12 people in the Tuesday, Thursday classes. So they're still going strong, and probably a lot of those people, if they're choosing to work in the area, they're working at Newport News Shipbuilding. So they're probably going out of the area to work. There are some people, somebody recently was hired by Pitt Lumber. think that's in Region 6. And from the welding program. So, and they're working at the diversity of employers is far greater. They're not by any means all going to carry on. Very few are going to carry on. They're mostly going out into the community in other areas. So, oh, and I don't know, Ian, did we want to mention the VEDP, the Virginia Economic Review? The latest issue of VEDP's journal had page 46, a little shout out to our workforce welding program here. So that was nice. And the commercial kitchen feasibility study. This had to do with the co-location of a commercial kitchen, a training facility, a catering kitchen for the university, and maybe just those three, and at Longwood outside Montrose. And this study talked about the whole needs assessment, the whole food entrepreneurship system in the Northern Neck, who would the potential users be, what would they produce, all that kind of thing. And did the preliminary due diligence for construction of such a facility.
When's Longwood going to start construction?
I think they're accepting checks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think this is the end of it. But yeah, that's a great question. And I will go into more detail on that. We applied through the EDA ARPA tourism door for a major grant to try to implement this project along with a lot of the other Longwood stuff, not the lodging, because lodging was ineligible. And we didn't get it. This was the tourism ARPA money for EDA was extraordinarily competitive. I think I've heard of one other project in Virginia that was funded. There may be more. It's just, I don't know if anybody else has any intel on that, but it was super, super competitive. And this would have been a great project for that. So we are going to go back to EDA and shave it down and try to actually go into the commercial kitchen part of it. Just the commercial kitchen part. Really.
Was this the Build Back Better? Which one was it for EDA?
We tried for the January 31st deadline for ARPA tourism. It's the tourism one. And then we'd like to go in for an economic adjustment grant in the fall, perhaps.
So when you say commercial kitchen, how do you define it?
Eighth is, sorry?
Cloud kitchen or something else?
No, not a cloud kitchen, be a physical kitchen where people go.
Cloud kitchens are physical.
Oh, cloud.
But it's an innovation of the last 5 or 6 years, where a kitchen, at which multiple restaurants and other food purveyors work, some branded, some not branded. Typically, we'll advertise on the web that say tacos at 3 a.m. in the morning from Taco Bell.
Oh, from this location?
Yes.
No, I don't think that would be. Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't think that would be a good fit for this location because,
So I'm asking kind of what
yeah, the commercial kitchen would really be almost for pilot production of facility, like if people wanted to can their peppers or make pepper jelly or things like that. A canning facility and things like that as what would be for food production, basically to extend the life of a lot of the growers here. A lot of farm markets have what they're currently growing, but then the preserved part would extend their season and their goods and their ability to sell. And a lot of that stuff, well, almost all of it is done outside the Northern Neck at commercial kitchen facilities elsewhere in Virginia. And those are
Virginia Department of Agriculture and the whole Virginia.
VDACs. Yep.
And do they have any support?
have community facilities. They do have that, but it's not, I'm not sure if they would. I don't know that they have enough there. See, this would be owned by a university in the end. So, yeah.
I was curious. I'm wondering if it would make it maybe even more attractive since it is partnered with Longwood to kind of wrap it into an accelerator model. So thinking about like you have the facility, so I can package my jam, but you also teach me how to market it, distribute it.
Yes,
distribute it,
absolutely.
And maybe putting all of that together along with do some of the classes.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yes, that would be awesome. I would love to see that in that, and that would be very, very doable. Back to what you said about VDACs. VDACs, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think they require significant local match. And there wouldn't be that, this would not be owned by Westmoreland County, for example, so.
My understanding, VDACs, they don't have a lot of grant dollars. They're more for planning purposes. And they have some other dollars that can work on construction, but it's limited. It's competitive.
Well, so the Department of Commerce that you're talking about, because
Yes, Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration.
So Karen, Secretary of Commerce, Karen Merrick is different. One of the charges she's been given is 10,000 new businesses. So she's trying to be very aggressive on this stuff and hammer all of the sub departments. So it's probably worth your. I'm happy to make that introduction too. That's fine, but I like the idea of now, the other question was, who is it who regulates food? So like, when I go to the farmer's market in Matthews,
It's VDACs.
some people can't sell, they used to be able to sell cheese, and now they can't sell cheese. So,
Yeah, a lot of that's VDACs.
okay, so it seems to me you really need to get their cooperation.
Yeah.
And the cooperation, but I need to get early. This is what we-
Yeah, Karen is, I don't know her, the Secretary of Commerce and Trade, is coming to the Northern Neck August 23rd and the Middle Peninsula August 24th. So, yeah, yes. So,
Let me will comment. So
Sure.
we actually approved a project called Cover Food Business Incubator in Charlottesville area. So that might be worth connecting with and kind of take some best practices, but it's kind of, to your point, Rob, it's a accelerator. So they're also, it's a commercial kitchen, so it's working with food producers and proof of concept, but also the distribution of it, the canning of it, and really looking at outside Main Street, so looking outside the state. We just funded it, but it's looking very.
that's great.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you. They want to take a look at that. So, any other questions?
Lisa, I know that we've talked about like some of these offline quite a bit, but just like thinking about some other project ideas we've had bubble up. The workforce study, I know part of that was supposed to be like sites identification. Was there anything that came out of that? That could lead us to some sites for training? We've been talking with folks about diesel mechanic training, stuff like that. Or are there other sites in mind that maybe weren't included in that?
Not at this time. I think that would be almost an RCC question, because they would have to be the ones to determine whether they could manage anything else or the cost of standing up a program and acquisition and all of that. And I don't know. It came down to the Westmoreland Workforce Training Center having capacity. And the idea of clustering additional programming there would build up what we have instead of, and then the culinary arts piece possibly at Whole Springs. So no other sites emerged. It's potential.
Mentioned that one of the findings in the study was that the businesses weren't aware of what trainings were being offered. Do you know if RCC
anything to close that gap?
Jackie, we have a lot of the whole business roundtable piece kind of came up. And I think there's a lot more outreach on RCC's part than there was, and more awareness that businesses didn't know. So I think that is happening. I think you're working on it.
And one of their roles is when they went out and meet with businesses, to try to make that connection between what is there and what is needed.
I think if Bruce can chime in. I think that's been an ongoing issue with colleges and businesses for decades. And it's, you know, sometimes you hold events and you want to do things, businesses don't show up.
Mhm.
You know, other times, you know, businesses talking to chambers of commerce or regional alliances or something like that. They're just trying to maintain that connectivity is a challenge. So I hope you can keep it going.
One of the things that we heard from the individuals, and they worked at a community college, and they said they didn't know how to get in touch with community college. So that just me, but that's one of the things we're trying to work on.
And I will say, we, UMW just applied for a VTOP grant, SHOV, which if awarded with a role that works regionally to help employers with that. So to identify where those contact points are within within higher ed, so community college and university. So more to come on that. But we should partner.
And just for the record, West Rock, we are involved. I stay in touch with Jackie all the time in our community colleges, and we're out in our community all the time. So we're not one of the problems.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We get 5 queued up here. Okay, Todd, we're ready for you to talk about the RIFA.
Hey, good morning. Hey, did the video for you guys go away?
Yeah, hold on a second. We probably need to turn your volume.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how.
All right.
Nice sunny.
There it is.
87.
Yeah, it's all the way up. That's
No, you're good. I just wanted to make sure that everybody could see me, or I could squint and try to identify everybody in there. So, well, good news, finally. Hold on, let me do this. Can I do this? Does that work? There I am. Good news, finally, we have a RIFA. So King George, big thanks to Nick over there, and then, excuse me, the city of Fredericksburg were the 2 founding members, or founding localities of our RIFA. We're very excited. I believe that there were a couple of announcement links that were sent out over the last couple of months or so. The Freelance Star gave us some very nice coverage related to the RIFA and sort of explaining sort of to the public what that is. And then we've also included that in our newsletter and our closeout documents. Now, the fun part begins. We will start to work with the 2 localities to assimilate a governing sort of body to that, which is similar in theory to an EDA. Now, what this does also allow is it allows for any locality to join our RIFA at any time, with the idea that the ordinance and the language and the bylaws and that they have to join as they stand now, right? Which we believe will be fine. We've had some preliminary conversations with our 2 localities about some potential projects. Again, though, from an administrative standpoint, we now begin to put together sort of that board or council that will work on that. But one of the things that that this REFA would have been able to handle had the timing been a little different, just to give you sort of an idea of a project to do, or as an applying entity perhaps, would be for a federal EPA brownfield grant application, right? So when we were talking about REFAs, generally we're talking about, cost and revenue share, and that is, at the core, the best thing that this REFA can do, right, is become sort of a regional EDA in a way. I'll be careful saying that, but as we've learned, went through an application process for a grant last year. The Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, as its entity, right, as a 501c6, became ineligible to apply for this grant. From a practicality standpoint, the organization had the ability to do all of these things, but from sort of a technical standpoint, on the guidelines, we weren't. REFAs, though, are. Right. So these are things that we're learning as we're going through, as things that this entity can do that we hadn't really thought of in the past. So those are very exciting. I want to thank council. Obviously, thanks DHCD for giving us, like 27 extensions to finally get this done. But we did, and we're very pleased with it. Hopefully, we'll be able to use this entity to apply for future projects that could be from, site development, site improvement, which is, I think, what we kind of talked about when we were first talking about the REFA. Now with the Virginia Business Ready Sites Program funding, fingers crossed that maintains its momentum going through with VEDP. We'll be able to do that and match it with, whether that be localities or a partnership between localities and landowners. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Todd, thank you. Any questions of Todd? Well, I'll offer my personal thanks to you and Nick and whoever else worked on this of getting us across the goal line. Because then we'll look forward to the first opportunity to approve something the rest will bring forward. So.
I will just real quick, I know you and I think probably talked about this a bit, but do you know any of the other localities who were initially hoping to be a part of this? Do you know if there is any additional consideration or if that's just kind of totally on hold at this point?
Yes, there is consideration, I would say. Depending on what week it is, it's going to be one more than the other. But yes, there is still consideration. I do believe, I think sort of behind the scenes, right, internally, one or two dominoes to fall pushes it sort of in the direction of getting it past that finish line. As I know that you guys know better than I, sometimes these things become a little bit political. So from the ebbs and flows of how, maybe certain localities from a board standpoint are made up. But it's also, when it's at the forefront, right? So as VBRSP funding was, really cut, and site development funding on the state level was really cut post the Go Virginia statewide characterization efforts. The momentum for doing a REFA, since this was kind of what we were basing it as sort of the explanatory thing, right? Kind of fell out of a little bit of the spotlight. As we're getting back into that, and as Go Virginia and DHCD, we've had great conversations of how we can apply site development funds and ironing out those details. I think that we can get back on track, but from a candid standpoint, yes, they are. But it really kind of depends on what sort of projects are in the pipeline to push that into more of an emphasis.
And are there, just kind of follow up on that, obviously another conversation we've had too often on, but Are there specific sites in the pipeline? We've done a lot of studies through Go Virginia grants that have identified sites, but are there any that you guys have in kind of line of sight now that we could look at tearing up or providing any additional development?
Short answer is yes. We've had a lot of attention, right, on our larger pieces of property. And I think once we start exploring more with the localities, which we've already started doing, right, everything along the interstate right now has a ton of attention. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of movement on those properties. And historically, that's sort of been the big things, right? The big, several 100-acre pieces of property and things like that. Once we're getting a little bit farther away from the interstate is when we start to talk about, okay, if we're going to market these properties, we need to make sure that they're ready. And by them being ready, they need what? Utilities, they need water, sewer, gas, fiber, electric. Those things are opportunities for the REFA to potentially play a part in helping get to market. Maybe not necessarily get it, from a tier 3 to a tier 4, because those properties are already kind of in circulation. They've for example, Caroline County, for example, while they're not in the REFA currently, they're experiencing, same thing with Stafford, they're experiencing almost an inventory shortage, right? Nick, I know that you can attest the King George Industrial Park is pretty much booked up, right? So you're looking a bit farther out 301 way. And yeah, there could absolutely be some opportunities for a partnership that the REFA could be used to sort of have the localities work a vehicle mechanism, right? So yeah.
Todd, good stuff, by the way. This is huge for the region. We did it on the Eastern Virginia RIFA and in Region 5's Hampton Roads, and they initially only, I think, and this was kind of spearheaded by Jim Noel. So it was York County, Newport News, and I want to say Portsmouth. But anyway, they only had 3 or 4 initially. Now they keep on adding folks. So I think to Todd's point, once you see some early successes, then the momentum picks up and other folks see the value.
Yeah, I think once the REFA is able to perform, a function where we can point to and say, hey, we did this because this exists, right? Then it gives the other localities, because right now, no localities in our region have participated in a REFA in the past, right? And so it's saying, yeah, it's a tool that's in your toolbox. You can use it when you need it, or you don't, but you at least have that option. That's one way to explain it. But once you see it from a practical standpoint, it really broadens it up. And to your point, the Eastern Virginia REFA and the Western Virginia REFA, I think, were both handled by the same law firm. And Steve Mead, who worked on those things, is the person that we retained to put our paperwork and all of our stuff together too. So we were very happy with that. He was very experienced and knew exactly kind of how to go through that process.
All right, thank you, Todd.
Thank you, guys.
We'll move on down the agenda. The executive report is, the report of the executive committee is in the package. We approved the budget. He's going to probably have a comment about that. He goes through his information items, and so I'll pass that over to you.
Yeah.
And if you would, in that piece where you had like $100,000 unallocated, if you could cover some of the items that we discussed in executive committee about future uses of that, and requested some more information from just make that.
Sure. So these things are all kind of in the brainstorming process. Bring it up to you guys as part of that brainstorming process. But one of the things that we had identified, so basically we have leftover money that doesn't have to be matched that we can use. So one of the things that I put in there is Urban Land Institute site study. So basically they come in, they have a panel to give us a comprehensive. So kind of ironically, they've agreed to do that for bono. So that's kind of pulled out of that. But I'll talk about that in a second. Another piece was, and this is kind of like, hasn't been totally thought through, but potentially providing funding to increase the capacity of the PDCs, primarily creating, I know you guys have comprehensive economic development strategies, but creating and or optimizing and updating the SEDS for the PDCs. Those are huge drivers for regional development. We had even discussed internally maybe doing something joint with all the PDCs just to enhance their capacity. Another thing that we had talked about, this is something we're actually going to do. Chip and I were talking about doing this potentially Q1 of next year. Other regions, but having a region-wide event where we have folks come in, we would have some sort of like pitch aspect of that, just kind of brainstorming projects. But we were thinking about doing that this fall, but we want it to be an actual, not just this in another place. So we want to be able to strategically get behind, putting towards marketing and stuff like that. So that we do have a lot of folks in the room, especially from the private industry. As we know, that's an area where we don't have a lot of participation. So we're thinking strategically now how we put that all together. Those were the main things. So, and again, I just bring those up as ideas. I think the last thing I said we are definitely going to do, but bring them up as a point of discussion.
So whatever happened to the RPC and Matthews, what we So the issue with that is we only had one company that would have been a party to that application. So it wouldn't fit. But potentially for unmatched money. And it was, I think the ask would have been, it was very small. It was like $300 per student for like 10 students. So it's small enough.
Is that the all points broadband? Is that all points broadband from Matthews?
I think that's it.
And then we teachers that are eligible for our program, the cost go to the class, being a cost of the classes that are outside of the class, which charges.
So we made that connection with the WIB and then working with Jackie.
So you're working. I'm just looking at how to get what they're trying to do is train people that train people.
And I think RCC has advertised the class and said it's available for eligible.
And it was basically to fund the tuition. Yeah. But I mentioned as that builds out, because this is kind of the initial phase of that build, to train like 6 folks, that we could work that into a larger workforce project and stuff.
I want to put not voting, but put my thoughts behind the project, like the pitch event. Billy, I talked to you about that. We talked like maybe that's been maybe 3 years ago now. I said we've talked maybe 3 years ago or so about what would happen if we got employers in the room, us in the room, like to start to talk about project ideas. And it seems like a very efficient way to approach what we've been trying to do over time. And if there's money to put behind it, I think that would be an excellent idea.
So I like the idea too, but I think part of the problem is the geography of the district, of the region. This thing is, I mean, I'm gonna throw a conference. The nicest place to throw a conference that ties people probably ties in. It's one of these things, but that entice people in. But if you were gonna be a business person, that's a hell of a long ways.
Right.
A lot of parts of the region.
Especially in the short.
Huh?
Especially in the short span.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But-
take advantage
but maybe you
of
could do-
virtual and hybrid.
But
as
maybe
well.
you do some two-part where you do the professional planning people. Right, Johnny, she's writing the board too. And then in the afternoon, you can get business guys in, do some level of that nice cocktail party. Yeah, some- You know, this is a great facility, but.
I think the nicer the cocktail party.
Right.
And UMW can throw a cocktail party, let me just say, hallway works.
Yeah. So the other piece, so the ULI piece, so when I initially started talking to ULI, the thought was to do a kind of standard site selection or site study with them. So we would pick one regionally significant, more industrial site. They would do a study for us, give us the comprehensive report. Going through, which we could still do. What we have planned internally, though, is to basically through our newsletter kind of send out a quasi RFP to the PDCs and localities for projects that they would like to have accomplished. Provide examples of things that ULI has done in the past. So the industrial site is one piece of that. The other piece of that is more kind of town-centric development. So these are potential projects that maybe would fall out of the purview of Go Virginia, but I think are a central piece to regional economic development and other projects that would be Go Virginia funded projects. So we, thought about some of the stuff that Warsaw's done, trying to do that in some of the other towns, Colonial Beach. So the plan was in our newsletter to have that kind of quasi RFP go out to the localities. And then potentially at the next executive committee meeting, have those presented and move forward with one.
Ian, that's very interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. 2 of our towns in Region 6, since our last meeting, I think, had fires. Warwick has had a very damaging fire. Yeah. A lot of those businesses are lost and relocated, and then Tappahannock is devastated. And so I don't know what role, if any, we have, at what point, in terms of offering that to those 2 towns, maybe.
I have to travel all the way to Tappahannock to get a man in
Well, that's hardship.
Okay, so I'll skip back to project status, pipeline update. So you guys have the pipeline here for the status of all the projects. I just want to go through.
Go back to this. Did you reach out to those towns? And to your point, maybe reach out to whoever the administrator is. Say, get authority and say, what can we do, guys?
So that's kind of the thrust of including that in the newsletter. I do that all the time.
I would say Ian, our next meeting is a joint meeting with all of the elected officials, and they should be there.
Right.
Next week.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I just want to go through real quick. So some of the projects that we have just had recent calls with. So the Germana project, the Tech Town Pipeline, that project's absolutely incredible. They're kind of finalizing some of the summer camps right now. But that's been a huge project in terms of creating a pipeline. The Coastal Resiliency Project, also kind of a state leader in terms of project. We're just working with them to try to figure out what potential next steps could be for additional Go Virginia grants. But you know, just to remind you guys, that's like a $3 million project. That's by far the biggest one we've ever awarded. So there are many moving parts there: workforce, research and development, and entrepreneurship that we're trying to figure out. Same with Rap Region Entrepreneurship, that's moving along super well. And then just last two, I want to highlight these in particular because I think that they're going to be leading to grants down the road. So the Fredericksburg Chamber Internship Project, they had about 50 businesses attend that, had about 70 students attend that. We're talking with them now to put in an implementation grant Q1 of next year that would provide an infrastructure for internship tracking, but will build out that expo for 2 years. So this really is going to turn into a long-term project. So we're working with them now on that. And then promoting careers in aquaculture, that's moving along. Well, also we're capitalizing on our partnership with Virginia Tech in that space quite a bit. At the executive committee meeting, we talked about the significance of that industry to the region and how we assess impediments to that industry and how we build it back up to where it used to be. So this project is a good precursor to that. We are also, the commissioner of VDAX is really interested in this. We had a call with the commissioner last week. We have a follow-up call this week with some more kind of boots on the ground folks, talk through, again, what the impediments are to this industry and how we build it up.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you for sending that article. I know my numbers are going to be wrong, but in the 80s, it was some 50 million bushels or something like that of oyster. There was some huge number. And I think now, even with the resurgence of commercial oyster farming and things like that, it's like 6-7 million bushels, or it's 15 million bushels. It is, we're still producing far short of
Pre-pandemic.
there are hurdles, not the least of which are NIMBY.
All those were wild caught meetings.
Yeah, well, that's right. And not,
So what is the aggregate?
that may have been in that.
If it might be in there,
Yeah,
I
it's been
can
in
find
that
it
article.
for you.
Well, and the other difference is you've got the triploids that
Right.
BIMS has discovered that you can, basically sell all year long.
Right. So and to that point though, we have VIMS, we have Virginia Tech, and we also have VSU that we're partnering with in space. And now the sincere interest from VDAX, I think we do have an opportunity to capitalize on that. I think that a large part of that though is assessing what are the issues that folks have. And then it's such a disjointed industry. There's so many small oyster farms. How do we aggregate that?
So who's forming the advisory committee? Project advisory committee?
Which one is this?
Are we on the aquaculture one? Or are we on-
Oh, and the aquaculture one. So that was,
So that's not the oyster. The oyster.
The oyster one is.
yeah, the oyster is the aquaculture. Right?
Yeah, that's right. So who's doing that?
So that was that's being led by RCC through their partnership with VIMS is part of that, and there are about 6 or so companies that are currently part of it. But that was one of the initial deliverables part of that project.
Can I highlight something in there? You see KCB Oyster Holdings, just what that is. That's Kellum, Coward, and Bevins. And they all came together. There was back in the day, there was a EDA funded hatchery study that said, yeah, we need oyster hatchery. And the 3 companies came together and privately formed a hatchery to provide seed to their own businesses. They don't sell the seed publicly. They use it on their oyster piece property and beaches and whatnot. So anyway, they're the big powerhouse for all of that. The other thing I wanted to mention back to the Hot Springs Farm is that they have opened a $1 million wet lab on the property at Hot Springs, and AJ Erskine with KCB Holdings has been there to tour it. I was very interested in partnering and with internships there and things like that to provide industry-led research at Hot Springs. And so if there's any research needs that come out of this, you've got you have VIMS, yes, but if you want to do it on another body of water as well, they would be happy to partner with VIMS or with anybody else. All about water quality.
And we also kind of similar, there's a gentleman who's a waterman down in the Middle Peninsula, who's a veteran, has a program for veterans. Part of that is training in aquaculture. And he was on the call the other week, and we've been talking about how we integrate that kind of more experiential training into what RCC is taking that to another step. So real quick, just in terms of
Sure.
pipeline. So I just want to highlight a few things. So I mentioned the Fredericksburg Expo project. FRA on the longer, but they're planning to put in an implementation grant to establish an entrepreneurial or entity for regional entrepreneurship. That's kind of on hold because their 501c3 filing is on hold at the federal level. But whenever that comes about, they're going to put in a grant for that. We've already had an initial project call with them. I've been working with Jackie, I call her every day. But her team really has been working on a region-wide workforce project that we're really excited about. So I know we're not like voting in anything at all today, but Jackie, if you just want to take a few seconds, not put you on the spot, but just kind of mention what you guys are working for.
So our biggest thing is trying to help build talent pipelines for our businesses and trying to enhance K-12 communication, also communication with business and post-secondary, and also attracting talent back to the region.
Yeah, no, that's
If
great.
there's anything I missed.
Yeah, and then the last two things, so been talking with this is great because it is being led by private industry, a cybersecurity training program in Northern Neck. So this kind of bubbled out of Lisa's meeting at the Northern Neck PDC, the Northern Neck Technology Council. But we have a few private industry folks. We have an instructor in Essex County, and then also we have a few localities, Colonial Beach, Lancaster, Northumberland, and then RCC is involved as well in establishing cybersecurity capital. And very last thing is the diesel mechanic training. We have localities who would move forward with that, but again, we're just trying to assess the site to do that at. That would start with house steps. That's the major hurdle.
Thank you. All right, our last piece of business. I've read the report, so Annie, either you're going to spoil our lunch or you're going to leave here with a smile.
Well, I'm actually deferring my time to Lily. So just for reference, I'm Annie. I've been with Dover Region for 2 months now. I am going to be Region 6 primary point of contact, but I came in right as all the budget was getting finalized. So I am also learning in real time. I feel like it's been with Dover Region much longer than me. So Ian just asked us to do like a quick overview.
Yeah, which choice did we get?
All right, so just kind of give you guys some perspective on, so this was probably one of the, my, since I've been here with you, this was the most chaotic budget cycle we've ever experienced, because just to give you guys some perspective, we originally thought we were gonna get about $70 million from the town pathway initiative. We ended up getting $2.5 million for that. And it was not only that we could capture, but I think they were going around different programs at the time and trying to figure out how they're going to fund it. So with that being said, about $27.5 million of unobligated Overton funds were recaptured. Some of that was the ERR stuff. So, you know, we had you guys having the board packet how it worked out. And then we had to look at anything from FY18, FY21 unobligated per capita. You can see some regions really kind of took a hit, and you know, Region 7, for example, you know, $11.7 million. But Region 6 took a hit too. So I don't have good news, but that is what got recaptured, $27.5 million. The good news is you still have about $884,503 in unobligated funds for FY22 that was not touched. And for fiscal year 2023, Region 6 was allocated $1,034,000. So
how is it good news that we have 20% of what we started with?
no, I'm saying good news moving forward. You have some money. So just look, the General Assembly makes these decisions. So I mean, there's nothing that we can do to. Again, it was not on our radar that they were going to recapture money. So, you know, I would strongly encourage everybody every budget cycle to reach out to your local legislators and tell them, you know, that we want to keep Virginia level funding. But that's kind of what happened. in this
So
last
we
budget.
lost. Did we or did we not lose the ERR grant that we had applied for the medical?
You still have,
Oh, we still have that. Okay.
unobligated.
Yeah. Well, that was not all.
Yeah, but we were able to keep stuff in the stuff that was percolating in the pipeline. Yes, yes. And that's why if you looked at our work packet, we said contingent on a budget. And so we had that in the pipeline, and we're actually taking money from our statewide competitives. We want to make sure we're able to fund projects that all the regions we're working on for the pipeline.
Well, I don't think any of this is a surprise. We've talked about this in council meetings, that there was always the potential to recapture in years that we haven't used money.
Yeah.
You know, you don't expect it to come to fruition when the state ends up with almost $1 billion surplus. You don't expect the recapture to be there. That would come when possibly the state had several $100 million shortfall.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. But so my suggestion is always talk to your legislators. You know, come really, I think October, November, they start kind of proposing budgets, and let's just keep the local legislators communication and tell them, you know, hey, just want to make sure, because I will say this came out of left field. We had no idea that was being considered, but what happened is they were trying to, there was a promise to fund tax cuts, and so they had to look at programs and see where there's money. And so we weren't the only program that also. But yeah, so Rob, it's not good news, but the good news is we have level funding.
So I'm confused, like, they haven't voted on option 1 or option 2 because we might lose 3.3.
No, this is from the board
This is
packet.
from the board
in
packet,
June,
June.
So,
Okay, they
Yes.
did, so they did with option 1.
yes,
Yes.
that captured the project.
Yes.
So we're-
Yes, so option one is what got approved in June 14th. And that was, yeah, yep. Yeah, because we wanted to better light as much as we could. And we only have so much room to work with, so, but, we thought, the state board thought option one was more attractive for the regional council.
Or without putting you on the spot, are there specific legislators in this that would be more important to this process than others?
I would say, this is what I would say, I think this new administration, there is a lot of leverage in Southwest Virginia. And to me, Southwest Virginia is very rural, just like Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck is. And I think there needs to be more influence from this rural area with the new administration that Southwest Virginia has. So,
Okay, that's helpful.
yeah. Politics is a crazy game, isn't it?
The governor is. Appointed these.
Yeah, you grew up, you went to Morgan Academy.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, yeah. $1 billion surplus, right? And then, yeah, I agree. It's,
Maybe they can get rid of the C-store too.
yeah. But I will say,
Unfortunately, we had a
unfortunately,
governor that tried that and it didn't work.
That's because the budget.
yeah.
Advance forward.
Well, and then, so this is what, had they come to us and asked us, hey, we're thinking about 20, we would have been like, hey, in the early days, a lot of projects, the program was early, right? And so folks were trying to figure out how to implement this money, and it takes some time. And we're seeing projects exponentially, or Fair Virginia funds exponentially being obligated now. It took a while, but now it's going really well.
It's taken a
And
while for us to get some.
yeah,
momentum.
absolutely. And to Ian's point, there's a lot of good pipeline. Lisa had a great presentation on some of the stuff that she's got percolating through some of these other smaller grants. So there's opportunities, and to that point, Lisa, I should have mentioned the Carver Food Incubator is actually got deferred. I got that confused. There's two commercial kitchens in Region 9, which is the greater Charlottesville area, Culpeper. And Beacon's Kitchen is the one that got approved, but they're both very much like a food incubator accelerator. So we'll touch base with Ian and touch base with those folks. But we anticipate that Carver one will probably be doing.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah. So
That resonates better.
Yes.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is what happened, unfortunately.
All right, anything else to come before the group? Once, twice. Val, since we see you live, any comments or anything, or are you good?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right, with that, we will stand adjourned, and I'm suspecting since most of the staff is, or at least Sarah and Ian have disappeared, food should be out there somewhere.
That's right, taco bar.
There's
A
still.
taco bar.
So we're just gonna need to wait.
A couple of minutes. All right. Well, that's okay.
Right.
I didn't go return phone call.
I didn't shout it out in.
Full blame for.
I did delay all my. I think it was my eyes.
Yes, it is.
I'm serious, but you see, I had this argument. What's his name?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's just started.
But we've got food
That's my.
right out there.
Oh, is it ready?
Yeah, it's right ready. We have plenty of-
It'll still be cheaper than.
Yeah.
I don't have heard of it.
Oh, yeah. This is.
I know those returns.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Well, what's the thing is that, so they used to stick to like restaurants.
So,
Stick to
yeah,
that, stick to-
that's like, it's actually brick and mortar.
Yeah, well, and they brought about, they mentioned working
But that was
with you
great.
guys. And that's the major thing. So, yeah, absolutely.
The Beacon's Kitchen, we're paying for the equipment.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys.
The